This is the world's largest underground iron mine, and it's hiding something that could give Europe a geopolitical trump card. See, the Kiruna mine in Sweden has been operating for over a century, but made headlines earlier this year for a discovery that could turn it into the most important mine in Europe. Kiruna has always been an iron and phosphorus mine, but decades ago, geologists identified something else in the rock, a special group of elements called rare earths. This group of 70 minerals is vital to today's most advanced technologies like semiconductors, high-power magnets, alloys, and much more. It's safe to say that much of our most cutting-edge technology would not exist without rare earths. Naturally, such rare and useful materials are very expensive, and their importance will only grow as new green technologies like electric cars require them for crucial components like electric motors. These minerals are not actually that rare in nature, but because they are only mined in a few places. Having a rare earth mine is a strategic advantage for any country. In fact, they are so important that both the European Union and the United States list rare earths as critical minerals, making securing a reliable supply crucially important from a strategic standpoint. And yet, despite their critical importance to modern technology, 0 tons of the minerals are currently mined in the European Union. This begs the question, where does Europe get its rare earths from? Ideally, the EU would get them from a reliable ally with whom it has a strong partnership. But this is the real world, so you can guess that's not the case. China is the world's largest rare earth producer by far, being particularly blessed by Mother Nature when it comes to these mineral deposits. Its territory contains 33.8% of all known rare earth mineral reserves, with 44 million tons out of 130 million worldwide. Vietnam is its closest competitor with half of China's deposits at 22 million tons. But see, simply having plentiful deposits of rare earth is not enough. You have to know what to do with them. And here again, China got lucky per se. Xu Guangxin was a brilliant scientist who pioneered rare earth research in China, inventing many processes to extract and refine the metals cost effectively. By 1987, high-ranking Communist Party members had noticed his work, and then President of China, Deng Xiaoping, stated the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. Over the years, China put investment into the sector, leveraging its natural fortune to achieve absolute global dominance in rare earths. Today, China stands for a stunning 70% of global production and 85% of rare earth ore processing capacity. The result is that China's rivals like the US and uneasy business partners like the EU fear China will exploit this dominance for geopolitical gains. In fact, some believe they already have. In 2010, the Japanese Coast Guard caught a Chinese vessel fishing in waters near islands claimed by both countries, but controlled by Japan. The Chinese boat crashed into one of these Japanese ships, leading to the captain's arrest. China then demanded the captain's release, threatening consequences if Japan didn't comply. When Japan didn't budge, reports surfaced of Chinese port officials preventing rare earth from being loaded onto Japan-bound ships. But more than just a few isolated incidents like this one, it's believed that China issued an unofficial embargo on rare earth exports to Japan. It had to be unofficial because an embargo would violate World Trade Organization rules, so of course no official announcement of the embargo was made, and China denied that any embargo was taking place. Based on the lack of rare earth exports to Japan, it seems the policy stayed in place for 2 months until Japanese authorities released the captain. Now, whether the unofficial embargo actually happened is hard to prove. Earlier that year, China had already announced a reduction in rare earth exports, so some claim the drop in exports was misinterpreted as retaliation when it was unrelated. Still though, the 2010 example shows what the European Union fears could happen if relations continue to deteriorate. But embargoes aren't the only thing they have to worry about. China puts in place export quotas to limit the quantity of rare earth leaving China, driving up the prices abroad while making the minerals cheaper in China. China's control of the rare earth supply chain has contributed to China's electric car boom and its growing dominance in electric vehicles. One of China's biggest foreign customers for these critical elements is the EU, which sources 98% of its rare earth supply from China. The high demand for the minerals and this dependence on China have led the EU to reconsider the situation. And that brings us back to Sweden. A few decades ago, a small amount of rare earth was found at Kiruna. In recent years, LKAB, the company that runs the Kiruna mine, began seriously considering extracting those trace amounts of rare earth from the waste rock that has piled up outside the mine over the decades. Processing the waste rock would produce rare earth concentrations of 0.02%, which is basically nothing. Which means they would have to process 5 kilos of material to just get 1 gram of rare earth oxides, which includes 16 different types of rare earths. But thanks to the discovery earlier this year, none of this will be necessary. See, the solution has been waiting across town this entire time. This is Pegaiga, a rare earth deposit discovered at the start of 2023, containing more than 1.3 million tons of the minerals. It lies just 2 kilometers away from the existing underground complex. It made headlines as the biggest deposit of rare earth in all of Europe, promising to reduce Europe's reliance on China and strengthen the Union as a whole as they push through the green transition. But the celebratory headlines may have gotten ahead of themselves. As you may have realized, 1.3 million tons is not a lot compared to China's 44 million. And there's another problem: density. See, calling Pegaiga a rare earth deposit is a bit generous, as it's actually an iron deposit like the existing Kiruna mine. In total, Pegaiga has 734 million tons of material, of which 47.3% is iron, 2.3% is phosphorus, and just 0.18% is rare earth. That's pretty terrible. For context, China's biggest mine, the Bayan Obo complex, has a concentration of 5.85%, over 32 times higher. Lower concentrations mean the extraction process will take much longer and cost more, as they need to work through more material to get the same quantity of rare earth. So if it wasn't for the iron, the rare earth concentration of Pegaiga wouldn't even be worth extracting. The existing Kiruna mine's presence also helps, since the new deposit is close enough to tunnel underground from the existing network to explore it. Still, for full-scale operations, a second site will likely be needed, but that's hardly the end of Kiruna's problems. The existing mine is already severely impacting the surface, despite being mostly underground. See, the Kiruna deposit is essentially a massive angled slab, burrowing deeper and deeper underground. That means as material is mined away, it leaves behind a giant overhang of earth, atop which is the town of Kiruna. Over time, this has caused the land to sink and crack as the overhang gets bigger and more unstable. As a result, LKAB has resorted to relocating the town, moving the most historic buildings from affected areas to another site. The new Pegaiga deposit will also impact the surface, from the massive amounts of waste rock produced to the infrastructure required to extract and separate the iron, phosphorus, and rare earth. It's bad enough that there are so few rare earths to separate from the other minerals, but then the different rare earths also have to be separated from each other. This process requires a ton of toxic chemicals and produces a lot of waste, from waste gas to toxic wastewater that needs to be appropriately handled. The new deposit also comes with a societal cost. The land surrounding the mine are the historical lands of the Sami people, many of whom still live a semi-nomadic life, herding reindeer. Their lifestyle has already been affected by the massive expansion of infrastructure around the mines, including the mines themselves to the towns, railways, highways, and everything else that came along with them. All of this has stripped away land reindeer used to graze in and imposed barriers along their migration routes. These changes have already made the Sami lifestyle nearly impossible, and it would only worsen with another mine opening in the area. So with all these negatives, what really are the positives of digging this giant ass hole? Well, while the mine is highly unlikely to save Europe from Chinese dependency, any local rare earth production is still crucially important. The entire world produced just 300,000 tons of the minerals in 2022. So, in theory, this deposit could serve the current world's needs for more than 4 years. Although demand continues to rise every year, it helps that these materials aren't being consumed by the millions every year. In the end, even though it won't be able to supply the entire world's needs of rare earths, it could supply Europe's needs quite well for quite some time if tensions were to rise with China. If trade ever collapses or a conflict erupts, Europe will not be completely vulnerable. At the end of the day, it will primarily be an iron mine, with a phosphorus side hustle and a sprinkling of rare earth. But there may be hope elsewhere, as recent technology developments could make recycling rare earth much easier than current techniques. Even more importantly, viable rare earth deposits have also been found in the US, Canada, Australia, India, and other countries. So China may not have a near monopoly forever. So what do you think about all this? Is it worth it to develop the Per Geiger deposit despite its challenges? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments down below, but thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.